My son didn't stab me in the back. He handed the knife to the waiter. I didn't go to that restaurant to be humiliated. I went to have dinner with my son. I was the one who picked the place. I was the one who made the reservation. I was the one who drove us there and circled for parking. I even wore my green dress, the one Carlos always says makes me look expensive. When the waiter asked if we needed separate checks, my son Carlos laughed and said without even looking at me, "She'll pay. She's rich." The words landed like a slap across a quiet room. She's rich. I, who had paid his rent 4 times in the last 2 years. I, who had covered $100 and $200 when he was between apartments. I, who still got bank alerts when he needed gas money, grocery money, just until Friday money. I was not a person with a name at that table. I was a credit card with legs. I sat there in the restaurant booth I had reserved, wearing the green dress he said he liked, watching my own son scroll through his phone while the waiter stood waiting for my response. The steak he had ordered without looking at the price sat in front of him. The cocktail he'd added, because why not, sweated on the table. The dessert he wanted for later was already on the bill I hadn't agreed to pay. I had driven us there. I had suggested we spend time together, real time, not just a text that ended with a Venmo request. I had put on makeup and left work early because I thought my 27-year-old son wanted to see his mother. I was wrong. For weeks, I had noticed the shift. The way he answered my calls only when he needed something. The way, "How are you, Mom?" always led to, "Actually, I wanted to ask you." The way people around him started repeating the same lie, "Your mom's loaded." And worse, the way he started to believe it. Carlos didn't see the 30 years I'd worked at the same company. He didn't see the mortgage I'd paid off early after his father left. He didn't see the budget I kept, the coupons I still clipped, the secondhand furniture I'd refinished myself. He saw the result, a paid-off house, a decent car, clothes that didn't look cheap, and somewhere along the way he decided that what was mine was automatically his. Last week, I got a bank alert while I was at work. My card had been used at a clothing store I'd never been to, $320. When I called him, Carlos said the words that made me pick up the phone and call my bank. "Relax, Mom, you've got it." That afternoon, I blocked every card. I didn't plan a lesson. I didn't plot revenge. I simply set a boundary that I should have set years ago. I am his mother. I am not his bank. I just didn't know the lesson would have an audience. 7 days later, 7 days after I'd blocked those cards, I sat across from my son at Giovanni's and watched him perform. He complained about rent. He joked about how, "Your generation had it so easy." He said, "You already have a house, Mom. Some of us are still struggling." I listened. I nodded. I even encouraged him when he wanted to add dessert, because I knew something he didn't. When the waiter brought the bill, I opened my purse slowly. I pulled out my wallet with the same calm confidence I'd carried for years. I handed over the first card. The waiter returned. "I'm sorry, ma'am. This one declined." Carlos laughed, actually laughed, and said, "Try another one. She has like 5. The waiter tried the second card. Declined. The third card. Declined. The laughter died on his face. People at nearby tables glanced over. The confident woman he'd been showing off to the waiter, the rich mother he'd turned into a punchline, looked at him with a calm that made his face go pale. "Oh, sweetheart," I said. "Looks like I blocked them." "You what?" "Because I was tired," I said quietly, "of you spending money that isn't yours." For the first time in years, the person trembling at that table wasn't me. But I wasn't always this woman, the one who could sit calmly while her son's card got declined in public. I wasn't born knowing how to say no. For most of my life, I was the woman who said yes, 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 even when it cost me everything. Let me take you back to the beginning, to the woman who built a house, raised a son, and forgot to build a boundary. I was 28 when David left. Carlos was 3 years old, standing in the doorway in his Spider-Man pajamas, asking why Daddy was putting suitcases in the car. I told him Daddy had to go on a long trip. I didn't tell him the trip was permanent, or that the woman Daddy was going with was his secretary, or that I'd just found out our joint account had $340 left in it. That night, after Carlos fell asleep, I sat at the kitchen table with a stack of bills and made myself a promise. Never homeless, never begging, never at anyone's mercy again. People think strength looks like never crying. Real strength looks like crying in the shower at 5 a.m., then putting on your work clothes and going to your job at the insurance company like nothing happened. That's what I did. Every single day for 30 years. I worked at Whitmore Insurance from 1995 to last year when I finally retired. I started as a receptionist, making $8.50 an hour. I left as a claims supervisor, making $62,000 a year. Not rich, comfortable. There's a difference, though Carlos never learned it. The house we lived in, the one Carlos grew up in, I bought on a fixed-rate mortgage in 1997. $89,000 for a 3-bedroom ranch with a fenced backyard. People told me I was crazy. You'll never afford it alone, they said. You should get an apartment. But I'd grown up in apartments. Thin walls, neighbors' fights bleeding through at 2 a.m., eviction notices on doors. I wanted Carlos to have roots, not temporary addresses. So I made it work. I packed Carlos's lunches instead of buying the school hot lunch plan. I cut my own hair. I bought clothes from the clearance rack at Target and altered them myself so they'd fit right. I learned to fix the garbage disposal from a library book. I painted the house exterior myself one summer, section by section, because hiring someone would have cost $3,000 I didn't have. I paid off that house in 2012, 3 years early. The day I made the final payment, I called the bank to confirm. The woman on the phone said, "Congratulations, Ms. Rivera. You now own your home free and clear." I sat in my car in the bank parking lot and cried for 20 minutes. Carlos never saw any of that. He just saw the result, a house that was always there, stable, permanent, paid for. That's the thing about sacrifice. When you do it right, now it's invisible. By the time Carlos was in high school, I'd built up a decent savings. Not retirement in the Bahamas money, emergency fund money, the kind that means if your car breaks down, you don't have to put groceries on a credit card. And I helped my son. Of course I helped him. When he was 17, his car broke down on Route 9. The mechanic said it needed a new transmission, $450. Carlos called me crying, saying he needed the car to get to his part-time job. I paid it. He promised to pay me back. He never did. When he was 20, he got accepted to state college. Financial aid covered most of it, but there was a gap, $3,200 per semester. I covered it. He went for 3 semesters, then dropped out because college wasn't for him. That's $9,600 I'll never see again. When he was 23, he was between apartments. His roommate had kicked him out over unpaid utilities. He needed first month's rent and security deposit, other $200. I paid it. He lived there for 8 months, then moved in with a girlfriend. When he was 25, his car needed new brakes, $450. I paid it. When he was 26, he needed interview clothes for a job he swore would change everything, $280 at Men's Warehouse. I paid it. He got the job, worked there for 6 weeks, then quit because the manager was a jerk. Last Christmas, his girlfriend wanted to see her family in Ohio. He didn't have gas money. I sent him $150 via Cash App. In February, he texted, "Mom, my phone's getting shut off. Can you spot me just this once?" $85. In March, "I'm short on groceries. Can you Venmo me $60? In April, "The car insurance is due and I'm a week away from payday." $120. I added it up once, sitting at my kitchen table with a calculator and my bank statement spread out like evidence. Over the past 5 years, I'd given Carlos $18,340. Not loaned, given, because none of it ever came back. But here's what hurt more than the money. Somewhere along the way, Carlos stopped saying, "Thank you." The requests became expectations. The gratitude became entitlement. His friends started making jokes. "Your mom's loaded, dude. Must be nice to have a rich mom. You're set for life." And Carlos started believing it. He started talking about me differently. Not "my mom helped me out," but "my mom's got it." Not "I'm grateful," but "she can afford it." He started comparing what I had to what he didn't have, as if my 3 decades of work were a lottery win I'd selfishly hoarded, instead of money I'd earned by showing up every single day. "You already have a house," he'd say when complaining about rent. "You don't have student loans," he'd say, forgetting I'd paid mine off by eating ramen for 2 years. "Your generation had it so easy," he'd say, while I bit my tongue to keep from screaming about the years I worked 2 jobs so he could have new sneakers and birthday parties. The breaking point came on a Tuesday. I was at work reviewing a claim when my phone buzzed. Bank alert, card ending in 4829, charged $320.18 at Lux Streetwear. I stared at the notification. I'd never been to Lux Streetwear. It was one of those expensive boutiques downtown where t-shirts cost $80. I called Carlos during my lunch break. "Hey, Mom." "What's up?" His voice was cheerful, distracted. "Did you use my card?" Pause. "Oh, yeah, I needed some stuff." "You took my card from my house?" "It was on the kitchen counter. I thought you wouldn't mind. I needed a jacket for this thing I'm going to—" "Carlos." My voice was sharp enough to cut through his excuses. "You took my card without asking and spent over $300. Mom, relax. You've got it." Those 3 words. You've got it. Not, "I'm sorry." Not, "I should have asked." Not, "I'll pay you back." Just, "You've got it." As if my bank account were a community resource. As if my money were his money. As if 30 years of work had been for him to raid whenever convenient. That afternoon, I left work early. I drove straight to the bank. I walked up to the teller, a young woman named Shanice who'd helped me before, and said, "I need to block all my cards." "Oh no," Shanice said, concerned. "Were they stolen?" I looked at her. "Yes," I said. "By someone I trusted." She nodded slowly, understanding more than I'd said. "I can issue new cards with new numbers. They'll arrive in 7 to 10 business days." "Perfect." I sat in the bank while she processed everything. Card after card. Blocked. When she handed me the confirmation, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Control. I didn't tell Carlos. I didn't announce my boundary. I just said it. Because here's what I'd finally learned. You can't teach someone to respect you by explaining why they should. You can only teach them by showing them what happens when they don't. I drove home that day, made myself dinner, chicken breast and steamed broccoli, nothing fancy, and watched Jeopardy like I did every weeknight. I didn't feel angry. I didn't feel vindictive. I felt clear. I am his mother, I thought. I am not his bank. The restaurant incident happened 4 days later. Carlos called me Wednesday afternoon. "Hey, Mom, you want to get dinner Friday? There's this Italian place I've been wanting to try." Something in me should have known. He hadn't called to get dinner in months. His calls were always transactional. "Can you help with? I need to borrow. Would you be able to?" But I wanted to believe. I wanted to believe my son wanted to see me, not my wallet. "Sure, baby," I said. "That sounds nice." "Cool. Giovanni's at 7? I'll make a reservation." I should have known then. He suggested the place. I made the reservation. That's always how it worked. He proposed, I provided. Friday came. I left work early, went home, showered. I put on the green dress, the one he'd complimented once 2 years ago, so I kept wearing it whenever we met because I wanted him to remember I was more than just a source of funds. I was his mother. I was a person he used to love spending time with. I picked him up at his apartment at 6:45. He got in the car smelling like cologne, checking his phone, barely looking at me. "How was your week?" I asked as I drove. "Fine. Work's annoying. My landlord's being a dick about the rent being like 3 days late." Not. "How was your week, Mom?" Not. "Thanks for driving." Not. "You look nice." Just complaints, just problems he expected me to solve. We got to Giovanni's. Nice place. Dark wood, white tablecloths, prices that made you think twice. The hostess led us to a booth by the window. That's when I decided I'm going to let him order whatever he wants. I'm going to let him get comfortable. I'm going to let him feel secure. And then I'm going to let him pay. I didn't know the lesson would have an audience, but I knew it was time. We sat down in the booth by the window, the one with a view of the street where people walked past in the golden hour light. Carlos slid into his seat, phone already in his hand, thumb scrolling. "This place is nice," I said, opening the menu. "Yeah, my coworker told me about it." He didn't look up from his screen. The waiter arrived, a young man, maybe 23, with slicked back hair and a practiced smile. "Good evening. Can I start you off with something to drink?" "I'll have water," I said. Carlos glanced up. "You got cocktails?" "We do, full bar." "Let me get an old-fashioned. Top shelf." The waiter nodded and left. I watched Carlos return to his phone, his thumb moving in that infinite scroll pattern. I wondered what was so important. A game, a girl, a group chat where he probably complained about his life while sitting across from the woman who'd built it for him. "So," I said, folding my hands on the table, "what's new with you?" "Not much. Same shit, different week." He put the phone face down but kept his hand on it, ready to grab it the moment it buzzed. "Work's been crazy. They want me to do all this extra stuff but won't give me a raise." "Have you asked for one?" He laughed, short, bitter. "Mom, that's not how it works anymore. You can't just walk into the boss's office like in your day." "In your day?" As if I'd retired from the workforce in 1955 instead of last year. "You're right," I said evenly. "Things are different now." The waiter returned with the old-fashioned, a rocks glass with a perfect orange peel curl. $14, I calculated automatically. Back when I was Carlos's age, $14 would have bought my groceries for 3 days. "Are we ready to order?" the waiter asked. Carlos hadn't even opened his menu. "Give us a minute." The waiter left. Carlos sipped his drink, finally opened the menu, and I watched his eyes skip right past the prices. He wasn't looking at the $8 pasta or the $22 chicken. He went straight to the ribeye. "The 16-ounce looks good," he said, $45. "Get whatever you want," I heard myself say. And I meant it, because the more he ordered, the harder the lesson would land. The waiter came back. Carlos ordered the ribeye, medium rare, with the loaded baked potato and the extra side of sautéed mushrooms. He added another cocktail. Then, almost as an afterthought, he said, "And we'll do the tiramisu for dessert. I'll take it to go." "Wonderful," the waiter said, writing it all down. He turned to me. "And for you, ma'am, the grilled salmon, please, with the house salad. $24. A normal meal, the kind you order when you're actually paying attention to the bill." The waiter collected our menus. "This is together or separate?" And that's when it happened. Carlos didn't even look at me. He just laughed, that easy, confident laugh, and said, "She'll pay, she's rich." The words hung in the air between us. The waiter smiled politely, made a note, and walked away. And I sat there, my hands folded on the white tablecloth, feeling the same thing I'd felt when I saw that $320 charge from the boutique. She's rich. Not, "Mom's treating tonight." Not, "We'll split it." Not even, "Can you get this one, Mom?" Just, "She's rich." Like I was a fact, not a person. Like I was a resource, not his mother. I smiled, I sipped my water, and I let him keep talking. "So anyway," Carlos continued, sliding back into his monologue, Rent's going up again next month. Another $50, it's insane. I don't know how they expect people to live. That is a lot, I agreed. And you know what the landlord said when I told him I'd be a few days late? He said it's in the lease that rent's due on the 1st. Like, dude, I know, but things happen. I nodded, saying nothing. Meanwhile, you're sitting there with a paid-off house. Must be nice not having to worry about rent. There it was, the subtle accusation, the implication that I had it easy, that my comfort was luck instead of 30 years of never being late on a single payment. It is nice, I said calmly. I worked very hard for it. Yeah, but still, your generation could actually afford houses. Now? Forget it. Everything costs like 3 times what it used to. The waiter brought bread. Carlos took 2 pieces, dipped one in olive oil, and kept talking with his mouth half full. My coworker bought a house last year. You know how? His parents gave him the down payment. Just handed him $40,000. Must be nice, right? I buttered my bread slowly. That was generous of them. That's what I'm saying. Some people just have it like that. Their parents actually help them. The words landed like a stone. I looked at him. Really looked at him. His $80 jacket from the boutique. His new haircut that probably cost $45. His nails, clean and trimmed because he'd started going to a nail salon for networking. And I thought about the 1840s. I thought about the car, the rent, the tuition for a degree he never finished. I thought about every single time I'd said yes when I should have said, figure it out. You're right, I said softly. Some parents do help. He didn't hear the edge in my voice. He just nodded, vindicated, and took another sip of his second cocktail. The food arrived. His ribeye was massive, perfectly seared, with grill marks like a photograph. My salmon was modest, healthy. The kind of meal you order when you're watching your budget because you actually know what's in your bank account. Carlos cut into his steak. Oh, this is perfect, he said. You've got to try this place more often. Maybe, I said. He ate like someone who'd never worried about money. Big bites. No hesitation. At one point, he flagged down the waiter and asked for steak sauce, even though the menu specifically said the ribeye was served with herb butter as intended by the chef. I ate my salmon slowly. I watched him. I waited. The waiter came by to refill water. Carlos ordered a third drink, a glass of red wine this time because it pairs with the steak. I encouraged it. That sounds nice. Another $12. He talked about his weekend plans, about a concert he wanted to go to, about how expensive everything was, how hard it was to save money, how people his age were financially screwed compared to previous generations. And all I could think was, my son truly believes that what I have is also his. He truly believes that because I worked for 3 decades, he shouldn't have to work as hard. He truly believes that my paid-off house means his rent is somehow my responsibility. He truly believes that she's rich justifies ordering a $45 steak and 3 drinks without asking if I even wanted to pay. The entitlement wasn't loud. It wasn't mean. It was soft and assumed, and so deeply embedded in how he saw me that he didn't even recognize it as wrong. I was not his mother in that moment. I was his walking, breathing bank account, and I was about to close for business. The waiter came by one more time. How's everything tasting? Amazing, Carlos said. We'll still do that tiramisu to go. Absolutely. The waiter smiled at me. Can I get you anything else, ma'am? No, thank you, I said. Just the check when you get a chance. Of course. Carlos pushed his plate back. He'd eaten every bite of that $45 steak. He patted his stomach. That was so good. We should make this a regular thing. Maybe, I said again. He checked his phone. I watched the light from the screen reflect in his eyes, the eyes that used to look at me like I was everything. Back when he was small, and I was the one who kissed his scraped knees and read him bedtime stories. When did I stop being mom and start being an ATM? The waiter approached with the black leather check presenter. He set it on the table. right between us, and walked away. Carlos didn't even glance at it. He was already scrolling again. I reached for my purse. Slowly, I opened it. I took out my wallet, the nice leather one Carlos had given me for Mother's Day 3 years ago, back when he still gave gifts instead of just asking for them. I pulled out a card, and I handed it to the waiter when he returned. "I'll take care of this," I said. Carlos looked up from his phone and smiled. "Thanks, Mom. Thanks, Mom." Like it was nothing. Like this was just what I did. The waiter walked away with my card, and I sat there, my heart beating steady, waiting for the moment my son would finally learn what I should have taught him years ago. The waiter came back. His face was apologetic. "I'm sorry, ma'am," he said quietly. "This card declined." Time moved differently in that moment, slower, sharper. Like I could feel every eye in the restaurant turning toward our table even though most people weren't looking at all. Carlos laughed, actually laughed. "Try another one," he said to the waiter, not to me. Like I wasn't even there. "She has like 5 cards. One of them probably just expired or whatever." The waiter looked at me, not him, his professional smile flickering with awkwardness. "Would you like me to try another card, ma'am?" "Yes, please," I said calmly. I opened my wallet again, made a show of sorting through the card slots, and pulled out a different one. "Try this one." The waiter took it and left. Carlos had stopped laughing, but he still wasn't worried. He leaned back in the booth, arms crossed, waiting. "When's the last time you updated your cards?" he asked, like he was doing me a favor by troubleshooting. "Recently," I said. "You probably need to call the bank. Sometimes they flag stuff as fraud if you don't use a card for a while." "Mm-hmm." He went back to his phone. The waiter returned, and this time his smile was thinner, more strained. He was starting to realize this wasn't a technical issue. "Ma'am, I'm sorry, this one also declined." The laughter left Carlos's face. He sat up straighter. "Wait, seriously?" "Yes, sir." "That doesn't make sense." Carlos looked at me now, really looked at me, for the first time since we'd sat down. "Mom, what's going on?" I pulled out a third card, the last one in my wallet, and handed it to the waiter without breaking eye contact with my son. "Try this one, please." The waiter took it like it might explode. He walked away faster this time. Carlos leaned forward, his voice dropping to a harsh whisper. "Mom, what the hell? Why are your cards declining?" "I don't know," I said, my voice sweet as sugar. "Maybe the system's down." "All 3 cards?" Technology can be unpredictable. At the table next to us, a couple was pretending not to listen. The woman's fork had stopped halfway to her mouth. Her husband was staring very intently at his pasta. The waiter returned. He didn't even say the words this time, just shook his head apologetically and set the card down on the table. 3 cards, 3 declines. Carlos's face went from confused to pale. "This isn't happening." "Oh, sweetheart," I said, and in that moment I let every ounce of calm I'd been holding flood into my voice. "Looks like I blocked them." The silence that followed was so thick you could have cut it with the steak knife still sitting on Carlos's empty plate. "You what?" People were definitely looking now. The couple next to us wasn't even pretending anymore. At the bar, a man in a suit had turned on his stool to watch. "I blocked them," I repeated, slower this time, like I was explaining something simple to a child. "All of them. Last Tuesday, actually, after you took my card from my kitchen counter and spent $320 at that boutique downtown." His mouth opened, closed, opened again. "Mom." "You didn't ask," I said, still calm, still smiling. "You just took it and used it, and when I called you, you said," and I quote, "Relax, Mom, you've got it." "I didn't. That's not—" "So I called the bank," I continued, "and I blocked every single card. New numbers, new security codes, everything. Because I got tired, Carlos. I got really, really tired of you spending money that isn't yours." The waiter stood frozen 3 feet away, holding the card reader like a shield, clearly wishing he was anywhere else on earth. Carlos looked from me to the waiter to the check still sitting in its leather folder. His face was cycling through emotions like a slot machine. Confusion, anger, embarrassment, panic. "Mom, you can't be serious right now." "I'm very serious. We need to pay. You can't just—" He stopped mid-sentence, and I watched the realization hit him like cold water. He didn't have his wallet. He never brought his wallet when we went out together. Why would he? I always paid. His hand went to his back pocket anyway, a reflex, confirming what he already knew. Nothing. "Do you have your wallet?" I asked, though I knew the answer. No, I thought—" He couldn't finish a sentence. The confidence he'd had all night, ordering the steak, the drinks, the dessert, announcing to a stranger that I'd pay because I was rich, had evaporated like steam. "You thought what?" I pressed gently. "You thought your mother would pay? You thought you could announce I was paying without asking me first? You thought you could turn me into your credit card and I just accept it? This isn't about that." "This is exactly about that." The waiter cleared his throat softly. "I'm sorry to interrupt, but is there another form of payment available? Or we could perhaps split the check." "Yes," I said, turning to him with a kind smile. "Let's do that. I'll pay for my meal. My son will pay for his. He's 27 years old. He's an adult." Those last 4 words landed like a gavel. Carlos stared at me like I'd grown a second head. "Mom, I don't have my card." "Then I suggest you call someone who does." "You're really going to do this? Here, in front of all these people?" I leaned forward, and for the first time all night, my smile disappeared. "You did this here, Carlos. You told a stranger I would pay before you asked me. You ordered $90 worth of food and drinks without even looking at me. You made me your walking ATM in front of all these people. I'm just making sure the bill gets paid." His jaw tightened. His hands clenched into fists on the table. But what could he say? Every word I'd spoken was true. The waiter, bless him, was trying to help. "We do accept mobile payments, Apple Pay, Venmo, PayPal." "I'll call someone," Carlos muttered, pulling out his phone. His fingers fumbled on the screen. His neck was red, creeping up toward his ears. He dialed, pressed the phone to his ear. "Hey, yeah, I need a favor." I couldn't hear the voice on the other end, but I heard Carlos's side of it. "I'm at dinner, and my card. No, I don't have it with me. Can you just— I know. Look. Can you Venmo me 100 right now? I'll pay you back. Yes, seriously. I'll explain later, please." He hung up, stared at his phone, waited for the notification. The waiter and I watched in silence. The couple next to us was not even pretending to eat anymore. Carlos's phone buzzed. He exhaled, opened his banking app, and looked up at the waiter with a face the color of raw meat. "Okay, I can use my debit card through Apple Pay." "Perfect," the waiter said, splitting the check with practiced efficiency. "Your total is $87.50, plus whatever he'd have to pay back to whoever just Venmo'd him the money. For one meal he'd assumed I'd cover. My total was $31. I pulled out the cash I'd brought, because I always had a backup plan, and placed 2 20s on the table. "Keep the change," I told the waiter. Carlos tapped his phone against the card reader. It beeped. Approved. "Thank you both," the waiter said, probably relieved this was finally over. "Have a good evening." He left quickly. Carlos and I sat there in the booth. The check was paid. The food was gone. The tiramisu he'd ordered sat in a to-go container next to his elbow. And the whole restaurant had just watched my son learn that she's rich doesn't mean she's your bank. He stood up without looking at me, grabbed the dessert, walked toward the exit with his shoulders hunched like he was trying to disappear. I followed him out into the parking lot where the real conversation was about to begin. The parking lot was half empty, the evening air cooling into that comfortable temperature that makes you forget what season it is. Carlos walked fast, like he could outrun what had just happened. I followed at my own pace, steady, calm, my purse over my shoulder. He stopped at my car, realized he couldn't leave without me, and just stood there, with his back to me, staring at the asphalt. I unlocked the car. The beep echoed in the quiet lot. Neither of us got in. "Mom!" His voice was tight, controlled, the way people sound when they're trying very hard not to yell. What the fuck was that? Language. "Don't!" He spun around, his face a mixture of humiliation and rage. "Don't do the mom thing right now. You just embarrassed me in front of an entire restaurant." I set my purse on the hood of the car and looked at him. Really looked at him, then my son. 27 years old, 6 feet tall, wearing a jacket I'd unknowingly paid for. Holding a dessert he'd ordered without asking if I wanted to split the bill. "I embarrassed you?" I kept my voice level. "Is that what you think happened in there?" "Yes. You made me look like I can't afford to eat. You made that waiter think I was some broke loser who can't pay for dinner. You couldn't pay for dinner. Because I didn't bring my wallet. Because I thought—" He stopped himself, but not fast enough. "You thought what, Carlos? Say it." He looked away. "I thought you were paying." "Why?" "Because you always pay." "Did I tell you I was paying tonight?" He hesitated. "No, but did you ask me if I would pay?" "I didn't think I had to." "Why not?" His face flushed darker. "Because you're my mom. Because that's what we do. I come to dinner, you pay, we spend time together. That's how it's always been." "No." I shook my head slowly. "That's how it became. That's not how it started." A car pulled into the lot 3 spaces over. A family got out. Mom, Dad, 2 kids. They walked toward the restaurant, the little girl skipping ahead. We both watched them pass, waiting for privacy. When they were inside, I continued. "When you were 17 and your car broke down, I paid for the transmission because you were in high school and you needed it to get to your job. You were a kid." That made sense. "Mom, when you were 20 and needed help with tuition, I helped because I wanted you to have an education. You were trying." That made sense. "Can we just—" "But tonight—" I pointed back toward the restaurant. "Tonight you ordered a $45 steak, 3 drinks, and dessert. And when the waiter asked if we were splitting the check, you didn't ask me, you didn't look at me. You laughed and told a complete stranger, 'She'll pay, she's rich.' I didn't mean it like, how did you mean it, Carlos?" He opened his mouth, closed it, tried again. "I was just, I don't know, being funny?" "Funny." I nodded slowly. "You were being funny. With my money. To a stranger, without asking me first. You're making this a bigger deal than it is." "Am I? Then why didn't you ask me? Why didn't you say, 'Mom, can you get dinner tonight?' Why didn't you at least look at me before announcing I'd pay?" He shifted his weight, the to-go container crinkling in his hand. "Because I knew you'd say yes." And there it was. The truth, naked and ugly in the parking lot light. "You knew I'd say yes," I repeated softly. "So you didn't bother asking. You just took. Like you took my card last week from my kitchen counter. Like you've been taking for 5 years without ever once saying, 'Mom, I'll pay you back.'" "I was going to pay you back." "When?" Silence. "When, Carlos? When were you going to pay back the $450 for your car, the $200 for rent, the $280 for interview clothes, the tuition for classes you never finished? When were you planning to pay any of that back?" "It's not. I didn't think you were keeping track." "I'm not keeping track." My voice cracked, just barely, just enough to show him this wasn't about money. "I'm your mother. I helped you because I love you. But somewhere along the way, you stopped seeing it as help. You started seeing it as what? Your right? Your inheritance while I'm still alive? That's not fair." "What's not fair, baby? Is that I worked for 30 years to pay off a house, and now my own son talks about me like I'm a trust fund. What's not fair is that I cut coupons and shop clearance racks so I can have a little security, and you treat that security like it's yours to spend." He looked down at his shoes. They were new. white leather sneakers, probably $120. I wondered if I'd bought those too and just forgotten. The waiter came to our table tonight, I continued, and asked a simple question: together or separate? And you know what you should have done? He didn't answer. You should have looked at me. You should have said, "Mom, would you mind getting this one?" And I probably would have said yes, because I love you, because I like spending time with you, because you're my son. Then why didn't you just pay? His voice was small now, confused, like a child who couldn't understand why the rules had changed. Because you didn't ask, Carlos. You announced. You turned me into furniture. She'll pay. She's rich. Like I was a thing in your wallet, not a person at your table. A silence stretched between us. Somewhere in the distance, a car alarm chirped off. I didn't mean it like that, he said finally. I know you didn't. That's what scares me. I picked up my purse from the hood. You didn't mean it because you don't even see it anymore. You don't see me as your mother. You see me as someone who has money and you don't, and that makes you entitled to it. Mom, that's not... Last week you spent $320 of my money without asking. When I called you, you told me to relax. You told me I had it. Like my bank account was your bank account. Like I existed to fund your life. He flinched. So I blocked my cards, and I didn't tell you because I wanted to see what would happen the next time you assumed I'd pay. And tonight I found out. I unlocked the car doors. Tonight I found out that my son would rather humiliate himself in a restaurant than admit he can't afford the lifestyle he's been living on my dime. I wasn't trying to... His voice broke. He cleared his throat, tried again. I didn't know it was that bad. It's not bad, Carlos. It's worse than bad. Because bad is when someone knows they're doing something wrong. You didn't even know. That's how normal it became. I opened my car door. He didn't move. When we walked into that restaurant tonight, I said, I was hoping we'd have a nice dinner. I was hoping my son wanted to see me, not my wallet. But you spent the whole meal complaining about rent and money and how my generation had it easy. You didn't ask me one question about my life. You didn't thank me for driving. You didn't even look at me until your card declined. Mom, I paid for my meal tonight, I said, getting into the driver's seat. You paid for yours. That's how it should be. You're 27 years old, Carlos. You're not a child, and I'm not your ATM. He stood there in the parking lot, still holding that stupid tiramisu, looking lost. Get in the car, I said quietly. I'll take you home. He got in, closed the door, put on his seatbelt. We drove in silence for 6 blocks. Then he spoke, and his voice was different, smaller, younger, more real. Mom, I'm sorry. For what? For tonight. For embarrassing you. You didn't embarrass me, baby. You embarrassed yourself. More silence. The radio was off. The only sound was the tires on asphalt and the gentle hum of the engine. I didn't know you felt like that, he said. Like I was using you. Because you never asked how I felt. You just assumed. I thought you liked helping me. I do like helping you. I love helping you. But there's a difference between helping and being taken advantage of. I stopped at a red light, looked over at him. When you help someone, they say thank you. They appreciate it. They remember it. When someone's being used, they stop hearing thank you and start hearing, can you also... He nodded slowly, staring out the window. The light turned green. I drove. I didn't know you blocked your cards because of me, he said. What did you think I blocked them for? I don't know. I didn't think about it. That's the problem, Carlos. You don't think about it. You don't think about where the money comes from or what I had to do to earn it or what it costs me every time I say yes. You just think it's there, so you should have it. We pulled into his apartment complex. I parked in front of his building, the one I'd helped him move into, the one I'd covered first month's rent for, the one where he was currently 3 days late on payment because he'd spent his rent money on concert tickets. I put the car in park but didn't turn it off. "I need you to hear me," I said. "Really hear me. I am not rich, Carlos. I am comfortable. There's a difference. I have money because I worked for 30 years and never spent more than I had. I have a house because I paid the mortgage every month for 15 years, even when it hurt. I have savings because I said no to things I wanted so I could say yes when emergencies happened." He was listening now, really listening, not just waiting for his turn to talk. "And I helped you because you're my son and I love you. But love doesn't mean unlimited access. Love doesn't mean I work for 3 decades so you can avoid working now. Love doesn't mean you get to treat me like a vending machine that dispenses cash every time you're inconvenienced." "I never thought about it like that," he whispered. "I know, that's why I had to show you." He sat there, the to-go container in his lap, his expensive jacket rustling as he breathed. "What do I do now?" he asked. "You grow up," I said simply. "You stop calling me only when you need something. You start paying your own rent, your own phone bill, your own everything. And if you need help, real help, emergency help, you ask respectfully, like you're asking a favor, not demanding a right. Okay. And you never ever tell a stranger I'll pay for something without asking me first. Okay. And you pay me back. Not all of it, not right away. But you start. $50 a month, $100 a month, whatever you can actually afford, because that's what adults do. They honor their debts." He nodded, his throat working like he was trying not to cry. "I love you," I said. "I will always love you, but I will not always give you money. Those are 2 different things, and you need to learn that before you're 30 and still asking your mother to pay for your life." "I understand. Do you?" He looked at me, and for the first time in years, I saw my actual son. Not the entitled young man who thought my wallet was his wallet, but the boy I'd raised, the one who used to help me fold laundry and told me I was the best mom in the world. "I do," he said. "I really do." "Good." I reached over and squeezed his hand. "Now get out of my car. You have rent to figure out." He laughed, a short surprise sound, and got out. He closed the door, then leaned down to look through the window. "Mom? Yeah, baby? Thank you. For tonight. For teaching me." I smiled. "You're welcome." He walked toward his building, the tiramisu in one hand, his phone in the other, probably already texting whoever Venmo'd him the money to apologize and explain. I watched him go inside. Then I drove home, turned on Jeopardy, and ate leftover chicken from the fridge, and I felt lighter than I had in years. 2 days passed. Saturday, Sunday, no calls, no texts, no, "Hey, Mom, can you..." Just silence. I went about my life. I grocery shopped, spent $47.32 and used 2 coupons. I watched my shows. I called my sister Diana in Phoenix and told her the whole story. She laughed so hard she snorted. "I wish I could have seen his face," Diana said. "Little punk needed that." "He's not a punk. He's just lost." "Lost in your wallet, you mean?" "Diana." "I'm kidding, mostly." She paused. "But seriously, Amber, I'm proud of you. You finally set a boundary." "I should have done it years ago. Probably. But you did it now. That's what matters." Sunday evening, my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something told me to pick up. "Hello? Amber?" A woman's voice. Young. Cautious. "Yes? Hi, it's Vanessa, Carlos's girlfriend." I sat up straighter. I'd met Vanessa twice. Once at a birthday dinner I'd paid for, once when she came by my house to pick up Carlos. She was 24, worked at a dental office, seemed nice enough in that surface-level way, where you can't tell if someone actually likes you or just tolerates you because you're dating their boyfriend's mother. "Hi, Vanessa. Is everything okay?" Yeah, everything's fine. I wanted to call you about Friday night. Oh, Carlos told you what happened. He did. She sounded uncomfortable. And I wanted to say, I think you did the right thing. That surprised me. You do? Yeah, she sighed. Look, I love Carlos, but he's been really entitled lately about money, about his life. He complains about rent but then buys $200 sneakers. He says he's broke but goes out drinking 3 times a week. And whenever I bring it up, he says, "My mom will help if it gets bad." I close my eyes. He says that? All the time. And I've told him it's not fair to you, that you're not his backup plan, but he doesn't listen to me. She paused. Maybe he'll listen now. I hope so. I was the one who Venmo'd him the money Friday night, Vanessa said quietly, when he called from the restaurant. And honestly, I was so mad because he called me to bail him out after you wouldn't, like I was supposed to be his second ATM. I'm sorry he put you in that position. Don't apologize. You didn't do anything wrong. He did. She took a breath. Anyway, I just wanted you to know that someone's on your side and that maybe this was the wake-up call he needed. Thank you, Vanessa. That means a lot. Of course. And, I made him promise to pay me back by the end of the month. I smiled. Good. Hold him to it. I will. We said goodbye, and I hung up feeling a little less alone. At least someone else could see what I'd been seeing. Monday came. Still no word from Carlos. I went about my day, returned some library books, went to the bank, bought stamps at the post office. Normal life. The kind of life that kept going whether your son was mad at you or not. Monday evening, my phone rang again. This time it was my cousin Rita. "Amber girl, what did you do?" I sighed. Here we go. "Who told you?" Carlos posted on Facebook something vague about learning hard lessons and family drama. So naturally I called your sister, and Diana told me the whole story. Rita was cackling. "You really let his cards decline at a restaurant?" I did. In front of people? In front of a full dining room? "Amber," she was wheezing now. "I'm dead. I'm deceased. That boy needed that so bad." Some people think I was too harsh. Who? Who thinks that? I don't know. I just figured, nope, you did exactly right. That boy was walking all over you, and you finally put your foot down. I'm proud of you. It was strange, hearing people say they were proud of me for something that felt like common sense. But I guess common sense isn't common when you've been conditioned to always say yes. Rita and I talked for 20 more minutes. She told me about her daughter, who was in grad school and also struggling with money, but who always asked, always said thank you, always acknowledged the help she was given. "That's the difference," Rita said. "It's not about the money, it's about the respect." Exactly. When we hung up, I realized something. I didn't feel guilty. I thought I would. I thought I'd spend these days agonizing over whether I'd been too cruel, too public, too harsh. But I didn't. I felt clear. I felt right. And I felt like myself again. Tuesday afternoon, I was in my kitchen, making lunch. Tuna salad, whole wheat bread, sliced cucumbers, when someone knocked on my door. I looked through the peephole. Carlos. He was alone, hands in his pockets, rocking slightly on his heels the way he used to do when he was little and nervous about something. I opened the door. "Hi, Mom." "Hi, baby." We stood there for a moment, the screen door still between us. "Can I come in?" he asked. "Of course." I pushed open the screen door. He stepped inside, and I noticed things I hadn't noticed Friday night. He looked tired. His eyes were a little red. His hair wasn't styled the way he usually wore it. He followed me into the kitchen and sat at the table, the same table where he used to do homework, where I used to cut his sandwiches into triangles because he ate better that way. "You want some lunch?" I asked. "No, I'm okay." I made my plate anyway, giving him time to say what he came to say. Finally, he spoke. "I've been thinking about Friday, about everything." I sat down across from him. Okay. And I was mad at first. I was really mad. I thought you were being petty or trying to teach me some weird lesson or I don't know. I told my friends about it and some of them said you were being mean. I took a bite of my sandwich, said nothing. But then Vanessa got mad at me. She said I was being a spoiled brat. She said I've been using you and I didn't even see it. He looked down at his hands. And then I started thinking about all the times you've helped me. The car, the rent, the tuition, all of it. And I realized I never paid any of it back. No, I said gently. You didn't. I always meant to. I always said I would. But then something else would come up, or I'd convince myself you didn't actually need the money, or I'd just forget. I know. His eyes met mine. Why did you keep helping me if I never paid you back? Because you're my son. Because I love you. Because I remember being young and struggling, and I didn't want you to struggle the same way. But I wasn't struggling, was I? His voice cracked. I was just living beyond my means and using you to make up the difference. I didn't confirm or deny. I just let him sit with that truth. I'm sorry, Mom. His voice was thick now. I'm really, really sorry. Not just for Friday, but for all of it. For treating you like a bank. For not saying thank you enough. For taking and never giving anything back. Thank you for saying that. I'm going to pay you back. I don't know how much exactly, but Vanessa and I sat down and made a budget. Real budget. And we figured out I can give you $100 a month. It's not a lot, but it's enough, I said. Because it's not about the money, baby. It's about the respect. He nodded, wiping his eyes with the back of his hand. And I'm going to stop calling you only when I need something. I'm going to call you just to talk. Like we used to. I'd like that. And I'm never, ever going to tell someone you're paying without asking you first. Good. We sat in silence for a moment. I finished my sandwich. He stared at the table, at the pattern in the wood, at the placemat that said, "Home is where the heart is," that he'd made for me in 3rd grade. "Can I ask you something?" he said finally. "Of course. When you blocked your cards, did you know I'd do that? At the restaurant?" "No." I shook my head. "I blocked them because I needed a boundary. I didn't plan for it to happen in public. But when you ordered all that food and told the waiter I'd pay, I knew I couldn't save you. Not this time." "It sucked," he admitted. "It really, really sucked. I bet. But I needed it. I see that now." "Good." He stood up, and for a moment I thought he was leaving. But instead, he came around the table and hugged me. A real hug, long and tight, the kind we hadn't shared in years. "I love you, Mom," he whispered into my shoulder. "I love you too, baby. Always." When he pulled back, his eyes were wet, but he was smiling. "Can we try again?" he asked. "Like, maybe lunch next week, my treat." I smiled. "I'd like that." "Cool." He wiped his eyes again, laughed at himself. "Okay, I should go. I have to work in an hour." I walked him to the door. He stepped outside, turned back. "Hey, Mom." "Yeah?" "You're not rich, are you?" "No, baby, I'm comfortable. Big difference." He nodded slowly, understanding something he should have understood years ago. "Okay, I'll see you soon." "See you soon." I watched him walk to his car, the one I'd paid to fix twice. He got in, waved, drove away, and I went back inside to finish my lunch, feeling like maybe, just maybe, I'd gotten my son back. The thing about setting a boundary is that the boundary itself is just the beginning. The real work comes after, when people test it, question it, try to find ways around it, or convince you that you were wrong to set it in the first place. The calls started Wednesday. First, it was Carlos's friend Drew. I didn't have his number saved, so when Drew M. popped up on my screen, I almost didn't answer. "Mrs. Rivera?" Young voice, uncertain. Yes? Hi, it's Drew, Carlos's friend. We met at his birthday last year. I vaguely remembered. Tall kid, loud laugh, drank too much beer and told stories that went nowhere. Hi, Drew. What can I do for you? So, Carlos told me what happened at the restaurant. Here we go. Okay. And I just wanted to say, I think that was kind of harsh. I sat down on my couch, prepared for this. How so? I mean, you embarrassed him in front of all those people. You could have just talked to him privately or whatever. You didn't have to make it this big public thing. Drew, I said calmly, did Carlos tell you what he said to the waiter? He said you'd pay. So? He said, she'll pay, she's rich. Without asking me first, in front of a stranger, after ordering $90 worth of food and drinks. Silence. And did he tell you that the week before, he took my credit card without asking and spent 320 hotri? I mean, he mentioned something about that. So when, exactly, was I supposed to have this private conversation, after he'd already spent my money? After he'd already announced to a restaurant full of people that I was his personal ATM? It's just, I don't know, he's your son. Aren't you supposed to help him? I've helped him for 27 years, Drew. At some point, help becomes enabling, and I decided I was done enabling. But he's struggling. So am I interrupted. I'm 58 years old. I'm retired. I'm living on a fixed income. Every dollar I give Carlos is a dollar I can't use for my own expenses, my own emergencies, my own life. Drew went quiet. Probably hadn't thought about it that way. Probably thought I was some rich old lady hoarding money while her son suffered. Look, I said softer now. I appreciate you caring about your friend, but this is between me and Carlos, and we've already talked. We're good. Oh, okay, I wanted to make sure. I understand. But we're fine. We hung up and I shook my head. 23 years old calling someone's mother to tell her she was too harsh. The audacity. Thursday, the call came from someone I actually cared about. My sister Diana. Amber, I need to tell you something. What's wrong? I talked to Mom. Our mother, 79 years old, living in a retirement community in Florida, still sharp as ever and twice as opinionated. Oh no. Oh yes, Carlos called her, told her his version of what happened. What version? That you humiliated him at a restaurant because he borrowed your card one time. That you blocked all your cards just to embarrass him. That you're being vindictive because you're jealous he has his whole life ahead of him. I closed my eyes. He said that? According to Mom, yes. And she called me to ask if you were going through something. Going through something. Her words, not mine. She thinks maybe you're depressed, or bitter about being single, or having a midlife crisis. I laughed, a sharp, bitter sound. I'm 58. Midlife crisis was 10 years ago. I told her the real story. She listened. And you know what she said? What? She said, good. That boy needed a reality check. That surprised me. Our mother was usually team grandchild, no matter what. Really? Really. She said when we were kids, if we'd tried to spend her money without asking, she would have done worse than decline our cards. She would have made us walk home. I smiled. That sounded like Mom. But she also said you need to make sure Carlos knows you still love him, that you're not cutting him off forever, just teaching him a lesson. I already told him that. We talked on Tuesday. He apologized. Good. Then you're fine. Ignore anyone who tells you otherwise. But ignoring proved harder than I thought. Friday afternoon, exactly 1 week after the restaurant incident, I ran into Carlos's girlfriend, Vanessa, at the grocery store. We were both in the produce section, both reaching for the same bag of apples. She saw me first. Oh, Amber, hi. Hi, Vanessa. She looked uncomfortable, shifting the shopping basket in her hands. How are you? I'm good. You? Good. Busy, you know. She paused. Carlos and I talked about everything. He mentioned, "Thank you, by the way, for being honest with him." Of course. She glanced around, making sure no one was listening. "Can I ask you something?" "Sure. How did you do it? How did you say no without feeling guilty?" The question caught me off guard. "What do you mean?" "I mean, I grew up being told that family always comes first, that you always help family no matter what. And I've been helping Carlos for 2 years now, and it's starting to feel like what you described. Like he's not asking anymore, he's just expecting." I set down the apples and gave her my full attention. What's he expecting? Money mostly, and my time, and for me to just be okay with him not having his life together. She looked close to tears. Last month he borrowed $400 from me for rent. He still hasn't paid it back. And when I brought it up, he said the same thing he said to you. "Relax, I'll get it to you." Did he? No. I sighed. "Vanessa, honey, you're 24 years old. You should be saving for your own future, not funding his present." I know, but every time I try to set a boundary, he makes me feel like I'm being selfish, like I'm not being supportive. That's called manipulation." She flinched. "I'm not saying he's doing it on purpose," I added quickly. "I'm saying he's learned that if he makes you feel guilty, you'll keep giving. And that's not fair to you." "So what do I do?" "The same thing I did. You set a boundary and you stick to it. No matter how uncomfortable it gets, no matter who tells you you're being mean. Because the alternative is spending the next 10 years funding someone else's life while yours falls apart." She nodded slowly, absorbing this. "And if Carlos gets mad, if he accuses you of not loving him or not supporting him, you remember this. Love and money are not the same thing. You can love someone without being their personal bank. In fact, sometimes the most loving thing you can do is refuse to enable them." "Thank you," she whispered. I needed to hear that. "You're welcome. And Vanessa?" "Yeah? If he doesn't pay you back that $400, don't give him another dime." She smiled, small but real. "I won't." We said goodbye, and I continued my shopping, but my mind was elsewhere. How many people was Carlos taking from? How many people felt obligated to fund his choices because he'd convinced them that helping him was proof of love? And how many of them needed to hear what I'd just told Vanessa, that saying no isn't cruelty, it's sanity? That night, I did something I hadn't done in years. I calculated exactly how much I'd given Carlos since he turned 18. I pulled out old bank statements, credit card bills, Cash App records. I made a spreadsheet, because I'm that person, the one who likes order, who needs to see things clearly laid out. Column A, date, column B, amount, column C, reason, column D, repaid? The answer was always no. By the time I finished, it was 11 p.m., and the total at the bottom made my stomach turn. $24,680. Almost $25,000 over 9 years. That was a new car. That was a year of living expenses. That was a third of what I'd saved for retirement. I stared at that number for a long time. And then I saved the spreadsheet in a folder labeled Boundaries and closed my laptop. I didn't make the spreadsheet to show Carlos. I didn't make it to throw in his face or prove I was right. I made it so I would never forget, so that the next time someone told me I was being too harsh or too cold or not supportive enough, I could open that file and remember I gave. I gave so much. I gave until I was empty, and that was enough. More than enough. It was everything. 2 weeks after the restaurant, Carlos texted me. Not a Venmo request, not a, "Hey, can you," just, "Mom, can we talk?" I stared at the message for a full minute before responding. Of course. When? Tomorrow? Lunch? My treat. My treat. 3 words I hadn't heard from him in years. Okay, where? That diner on Oak Street? The one we used to go to when I was a kid? Mickey's Diner. We used to go there every Saturday morning when he was in elementary school. Pancakes shaped like Mickey Mouse, eggs however he wanted them, and chocolate milk in the big plastic cups with straws. 1 p.m.? Perfect. See you then. I got there at 12:55 because I'm always early. Carlos was already in a booth, which surprised me. He stood up when I walked in. "Hi, Mom." "Hi, baby." We hugged, brief but warm. He looked different. His hair was combed. His shirt wasn't wrinkled. He looked like someone who was trying. We sat down. The waitress came over. Older woman. Name tag said Barb. And Carlos ordered before I could even open my menu. "2 coffees, please, and we'll need a few minutes." Barb nodded and left. "You look nice," I said. "Thanks. I wanted to make a good impression." "On your own mother?" He smiled, embarrassed, genuine. "Yeah. I know that sounds weird, but yeah." The coffee came. We both added cream, stirred in silence. The diner smelled like bacon grease and maple syrup, exactly like it had for the past 30 years. "I've been doing a lot of thinking," Carlos started, "about everything. About how I've treated you, about money, about what kind of man I've become." I listened, hands wrapped around the warm coffee mug. And I realized something that really messed me up. He looked at me directly. "I realized I don't actually know anything about your life." "What do you mean?" "I mean, I can tell you every problem in my life. My rent, my car, my job, my girlfriend, all of it. But if someone asked me about your life, what you do every day, what makes you happy, what you worry about, I couldn't answer. And that's really fucked up." Language. "Sorry, but it is. You're my mom. I should know you as a person, not just as someone who helps me when I'm in trouble." The waitress returned. "Ready to order?" "I'll have the garden omelet," I said. "Wheat toast." "And I'll have the pancake special," Carlos said. "But can you make the pancakes regular-sized, not the Mickey Mouse ones?" Barb smiled like she'd heard that request 1,000 times from grown men with nostalgia. "Sure thing, hun." She left, and Carlos continued. "I also need to tell you something I should have told you a long time ago." He pulled out his phone, tapped a few times, and showed me the screen. It was a payment confirmation. $100 to my name. Sent that morning. "That's the first payment," he said. "I'm going to send you $100 on the 15th of every month until I've paid back at least some of what I owe you. Carlos, you don't have to." "Yes, I do. Because it's not about whether you need the money. It's about me being accountable. It's about me proving that I understand what you gave me and that I'm not just taking anymore." I felt something crack in my chest, something hard that had been protecting my heart for months, maybe years. "Vanessa helped me make a real budget," he continued. "Not the fake one where I pretend I can afford everything I want. A real one. Rent, utilities, groceries, gas, savings, and $100 to you. That's my life now. If I want something extra, I have to save for it, like a real adult. I'm proud of you." "Don't be proud yet," he said, shaking his head. "I haven't proven anything yet, but I'm going to." The food arrived. We both started eating, and for a while it was just the comfortable sounds of forks on plates and coffee being sipped. Then Carlos spoke again, quieter this time. "That night at the restaurant, when those cards declined, I wanted to die." "I know." "No, I mean really. I felt like the floor was opening up under me. I felt like everyone was staring at me, judging me, seeing me as this loser who couldn't even buy dinner. They probably weren't thinking about you at all," I said gently. "People are usually too worried about their own lives to judge yours." "Maybe. But in that moment, it felt like the whole world was watching." He stabbed at a pancake. "And the worst part wasn't the embarrassment. It was realizing you were right. I couldn't pay. I literally could not pay for the meal I'd ordered because I'd assumed you would." "Yes." and that assumption that you would always be there to bail me out. That's been my whole life strategy. Get in trouble, call mom. Need money, call mom. Want something, call mom. I never learned to fix my own problems because you always fix them for me. I enabled you, I admitted. I see that now. I should have said no years ago. No? He shook his head firmly. You helped me when I needed help. I'm the one who took advantage. I'm the one who turned help into entitlement. We ate in silence for a moment. Can I ask you something? He said. Anything. When did it start? When did I stop being grateful and start being entitled? I thought about it, really thought. I don't think it was one moment. I think it was gradual. But if I had to pick, maybe when you were 23, you borrowed $800 for a security deposit. You promised to pay me back in 3 months. 6 months later, you still hadn't, and when I asked about it, you said, "Mom, I thought you didn't care about that." He winced. I remember that. That was the first time I thought, he doesn't see this as a loan. He sees it as his money that I'm just holding on to. I'm sorry. I know you are. But sorry isn't enough, Carlos. Sorry is just words. What matters is what you do now. I know. He pushed his plate away. He'd only eaten half, which told me he was more nervous than he was letting on. That's why I wanted to meet today. Not just to apologize again, but to ask you something. Okay? I want to understand. I want to understand what it was like for you. Growing up, working, raising me alone. I want to hear the actual stories, not just the summary. Why? Because I realized I've been living my life in comparison to yours. You have a house, I don't. You don't have debt, I do. But I don't actually know how you got those things. I just assumed they were easy for you because you're older. I set down my fork. This was a conversation I'd wanted to have for years but never forced. They weren't easy, I said. When your father left, I had $340 in the bank. $340 to raise a 3-year-old on my own. His eyes widened. I worked at Whitmore Insurance for 30 years. I started at $8.50 an hour as a receptionist. I ate lunch at my desk, usually leftovers from dinner the night before, while everyone else went out to restaurants. I cut my own hair. I bought clothes from Goodwill and told you they were vintage. I learned to fix the garbage disposal from a library book, because hiring a plumber would have cost $150 I didn't have. Mom, I'm not telling you this to make you feel bad. I'm telling you because you asked. You want to know how I got where I am? That's how. 30 years of saying no to things I wanted so I could say yes to things you needed. I never knew it was that hard. Because I didn't want you to know. I wanted you to feel secure. I wanted you to have a childhood where you didn't worry about money. But somewhere along the way, not worrying became not caring. And you started to think money just appeared, like magic. He was quiet, processing. The house I live in, I bought it for $89,000 in 1997. I paid it off in 15 years instead of 30 because I made double payments whenever I could. That meant saying no to vacations, new furniture, nights out with friends. It meant living smaller so our future could be bigger. I always thought you just had it. I built it, I corrected. There's a difference. Carlos nodded slowly, and I could see him reworking his entire understanding of my life. The car you drive, I continued. I bought it used with 60,000 miles on it. The green dress you like. 50 on clearance at Macy's 5 years ago. The nice dinners I took you to, I budgeted for them months in advance. Nothing in my life was handed to me, Carlos. I earned every single thing. I'm an idiot, he whispered. You're not an idiot. You're just young, and you've been living in a world where you see what people have, but not what they sacrifice to get it. I want to learn, he said. I want to learn how to budget like you do, how to save, how to say no to things I want so I can afford things I need. I can teach you that. And I want to stop comparing my life to yours because we're not at the same stage. You're 58, and I'm 27. Of course, you have more than me. You've had 3 decades more time. Exactly. He picked up his coffee, took a sip, set it down. Can I tell you the worst part about that night at the restaurant? Please. It wasn't the embarrassment. It was realizing that when the waiter asked if we were together or separate, I didn't even consider saying separate. I didn't even think about offering to pay. My first instinct, my only instinct, was to announce that you'd pay. Like it wasn't even a question. Like you paying was just the default. Yes. And that's so messed up. Because you're my mother. You're the person who gave me life, who raised me, who worked her ass off, worked really hard to give me a good childhood. And I repaid you by treating you like a vending machine. You did. I'm going to do better. Not just with money, but with everything. I'm going to call you not because I need something, but because I want to talk to you. I'm going to ask about your life. I'm going to remember your birthday without Facebook reminding me. I smiled. That would be nice. And I'm never, ever going to assume you're paying for anything again. If we go out, I'm going to ask. And if you say yes, I'm going to say thank you, like I mean it. Okay. Barb came by with the check. Carlos grabbed it before I could even move. This one's mine, he said firmly. He pulled out his wallet, an actual wallet which he'd actually remembered to bring, and put down his debit card. No asking me to spot him. No, can you get the tip? No expecting me to jump in. Just him taking responsibility. When Barb came back with the receipt, Carlos added a 25% tip. Then he stood up, helped me with my coat, and walked me to my car like a gentleman. Thank you for meeting me, he said, and thank you for not giving up on me. I'll never give up on you, baby. I just needed you to grow up a little. I'm working on it. He hugged me, long, tight, the kind of hug that felt like a promise. I love you, Mom. I love you too. I got in my car and watched him walk to his. He waved before getting in. I waved back. And as I drove home, I felt something I hadn't felt in a very long time. Hope. Hope that my son was finally becoming a man. Hope that our relationship could be rebuilt on respect instead of transactions. Hope that when he called me next time, it wouldn't be because he needed something. It would be because he wanted to talk to his mother. That hope was worth more than $24,680. It was worth everything. Let me tell you something, my dear. My son told the waiter, she'll pay, she's rich. He didn't know I'd blocked every card that morning, and when those cards declined one by one in front of a restaurant full of people, I watched my 27-year-old son learn the hardest lesson I'd ever taught him. Money and love are not the same thing. For years, too many years, I confused the two. I thought helping him meant always saying yes. I thought supporting him meant paying for everything. I thought being a good mother meant being an open wallet. I was wrong. Being a good mother means teaching your child to stand on their own. It means letting them fail when failure is the only teacher they'll listen to. It means loving them enough to let them feel uncomfortable, embarrassed, even humiliated, if that's what it takes for them to grow. That night at Giovanni's, I could have saved him. I could have pulled out cash. I could have transferred money to his account. I could have made a big show of calling the bank and fixing the problem. But I didn't, because saving him in that moment would have taught him that I'll always be there to rescue him from his own choices. It would have taught him that she's rich is a valid reason to spend money that isn't his. It would have taught him that entitlement works as long as you have a mother who's too guilty to say no. And I was done teaching him those lessons. I'm going to be honest with you. It wasn't easy. Sitting there, watching his face turn red, watching him fumble for his phone to call someone else to bail him out. It hurt. Because he's my baby. He's my only child. Every instinct I had was screaming at me to make it stop, to fix it, to protect him. But protection isn't always rescue. Sometimes protection looks like letting them feel the consequences. Sometimes protection looks like saying, you created this situation, you solve it. Sometimes protection looks like loving someone enough to watch them struggle, because struggle is where growth happens. For years, Carlos thought I was rich. He saw my paid-off house, my decent car, my ability to help him when he asked, and he translated that into, Mom has unlimited money. But here's what he didn't see. He didn't see the 30 years I worked at the same company, slowly climbing from receptionist to supervisor. He didn't see the double mortgage payments I made so I could pay off the house early. He didn't see the coupons I clipped, the clearance racks I shopped, the leftovers I ate for lunch every single day. He didn't see me learning to fix things myself because hiring someone cost money I'd rather save. He didn't see the 1,000 small sacrifices I made so he could have a stable childhood. He saw the result and thought it was luck. That's what this generation does, my dear. They see what we have and think we were handed it. They don't see the grind. They don't see the discipline. They don't see the decades of showing up, of saying no to ourselves so we could say yes to them. And because they don't see it, they don't value it. Carlos didn't value my money because he didn't understand what it cost me to earn it. He thought she's rich was a fact, not an insult. He thought announcing I'd pay was funny, not disrespectful. He thought my wallet was his wallet because I'd never taught him otherwise. So I taught him. I taught him that my money is mine. I taught him that rich and generous are not the same thing. I taught him that love does not equal unlimited access. And most importantly, I taught him that I am his mother, not his bank. Now, some people think I was too harsh. They think embarrassing him in public was cruel. They think a good mother would have paid the bill and talked to him privately later. But let me ask you this. How many private conversations do you think I'd already had? How many times do you think I'd said, Carlos, you need to manage your money better? How many times do you think I'd hinted, suggested, gently reminded? Too many, and none of them worked. You know why? Because there were no consequences. I'd say the words, but then I'd still pay his rent. I'd still transfer money when he asked. I'd still say yes when he needed help. So the words meant nothing. Actions teach. Words just explain what the action already taught. And that night at the restaurant, I took action. I let his cards decline. I let him scramble. I let him call his girlfriend for money. I let him feel what it's like when the person you've been using says, not this time. Was it uncomfortable? Yes. Was it embarrassing? For him, absolutely. Was it necessary? More than anything. Because if I'd paid that bill, nothing would have changed. He would have learned that Mom always caves eventually. That if he pushes hard enough, acts helpless enough, makes it awkward enough, I'll rescue him. But I didn't cave. I sat there, calm and clear, and I let him pay for his own meal. And you know what happened? He grew up. Not all at once. Growth isn't a light switch. But he started. He apologized. A real apology, not just sorry you're mad. He made a budget. He started paying me back $100 a month. He stopped calling only when he needed something. He started treating me like his mother again, not his ATM. Was the lesson worth the embarrassment? Ask me that now, and I'll tell you, absolutely. Because the alternative was spending the next 10, 20, 30 years being his backup plan, being the person he called when his life fell apart, being loved for my wallet instead of for myself. And I deserve better than that. Every mother deserves better than that. You know what I learned through all of this? The boundaries aren't mean. They're merciful. They're mercy for you because they protect your peace. And they're mercy for the other person because they force growth. Carlos needed to learn that he wasn't entitled to my money just because he was my son. He needed to learn that asking is different from demanding. He needed to learn that thank you should be followed by changed behavior, not just more requests. And the only way he could learn those things was if I stopped enabling him. So I did. I blocked my cards. I let him struggle. I held the boundary even when it felt cruel. And now, we have a relationship built on respect instead of transactions. Now, when he calls, I don't wonder what he wants. I just answer, "Hi, baby." Now, when we go out to eat, he asks who's paying. And if I offer to pay, he says thank you like he means it. Now he's learning to build his own life instead of living off mine. That's worth more than any meal I could have paid for. My dear, if you're reading this and you see yourself in my story, if you have a child, a partner, a friend who treats you like a bank instead of a person, let me tell you something. You don't owe anyone unlimited access to your resources. You don't owe anyone yes just because you've always said yes before. You don't owe anyone comfort at the expense of your own peace. Set the boundary. Hold the boundary. Let them feel the consequences. It will be uncomfortable. They will be upset. They might even call you cruel, selfish, mean. But you know what's actually cruel? Enabling someone to never grow up. Allowing someone to use you until you're empty. Teaching someone that love means erasing yourself so they can be comfortable. That's cruel. Boundaries are kindness. Not just for you, for them too. 3 months after the restaurant incident, Carlos took me to dinner. The same restaurant, Giovanni's. He made the reservation. He drove us there. He ordered sensibly. A pasta dish, 1 drink, no appetizer, no dessert. When the waiter asked, "Together or separate?" Carlos looked at me and said, "Separate, please. I'm treating my mom tonight." And the waiter smiled and said, "That's lovely." We had a beautiful dinner. We talked about his job, his goals, his relationship with Vanessa. We talked about my life, too. My book club, my garden, my upcoming trip to visit Diana. It was a conversation between 2 adults who respected each other, not a transaction between a bank and a customer. When the bill came, Carlos paid without hesitation. He tipped well. He helped me with my coat. He walked me to my car. "Thank you for dinner, baby," I said. "Thank you for teaching me," he replied. And I realized this was what I'd wanted all along. Not control over his money, not credit for my sacrifices, not even repayment for what I'd given, just respect. Just to be seen as a person, not a resource. Just to be loved for who I am, not what I can provide. That's what the declined cards bought me. Not revenge, not satisfaction, freedom. My son told the waiter, "She'll pay, she's rich." He didn't know I'd blocked every card, and by the time he found out, it was too late to keep treating me like furniture. So let me tell you one last time, my dear, sometimes you have to let them feel the bill, not because you're cruel, because you're wise, not because you don't love them, because you love them enough to let them grow, not because you're rich, because you know the difference between having money and being someone's bank. I went to that restaurant to spend time with my son. Now he comes to spend time with me, not with my money. And that, my dear, is worth every declined card, every awkward moment, every uncomfortable conversation. That's worth everything.